and the call center is going to be in the north. So I was quite concerned about what we'd have as boots on the ground outside of the call center in the south. So if you took 10 bodies and moved it to the call center, and all you have in the north right now is 6, so of course where the other 4 from the navigators, since the other group has dropped out. I'm not sure, I have the same problem as Lynn has. I'm not sure we're going to be having enough navigators with the navigators on the street, boots on the ground in the south.
And just to be clear, the numbers that we talked about for the call center, they're not reflected in what we're looking at here. So that the 10 during open enrollment and the 5 off enrollment, that's not included in these numbers. Those are two separate things. Okay. So the idea was now that their contracts are ending and wanting some continuity, what do we do? And we did go forward. I think our initial suggestion was a total of 24. That was the original extension offer. With a dollar amount of $77,500. We offered one group to have 14, one to have 5, and another to have 5. And what they ended up coming back to us with was the 11 and 4. Now, if you believe that we need to repurpose some from north to south, or we need to find a way to shift those resources, that's certainly something that can be done.
Absolutely, because this won't work.
This won't work, and I think we need to figure out how many navigators we need in the north and how many we need in the south, and then figure all the funding out, even if it's just for the next 45 days. But if for the last 45 days, I think this does not reflect the state.
Lavon was for the record, and I totally agree with the fact that this does not reflect the state, and I think that we certainly need to work that out before we sign any agreements with them as to where the people are going to be, and I agree that if we have 9 in the south, we need 2 in the north, or something like that. Certainly we need to look at the demographics of where are people located, but, who are enrolled, but I think that we should be proportional, and, with 70% of the population being in the south, it would appear that that's where the need is, as opposed to the north.
Well, we will be more than happy to revisit with our navigator partners and move resources as perhaps makes sense. There's no magic number either in north or south, but we are more than happy to work with these navigator organizations to make sure that we have the coverage that we need.
And if I might just say one more thing, I guess, there probably isn't a magic number, because the magic number actually might be something we can't afford anyway.
That's correct. So
I get that.
Or it could be 0.
So if the funding allows us to have 20 navigators, well, about 75% of them need to be in the south.
Okay.
It's just, to me, it's really, that's the simplest way. Whatever our funding will allow, it's just got to be a balance for the population.
Well, and I think after that, demand drives it. If you don't have the demand, you can move those numbers down if you don't do that.
Right, and to be frank, Madam Chair, that was part of our concern. It's difficult for us to forecast what the workload is going to be as we move off of open enrollment. And while we felt strongly that we wanted to have continuity, it was impossible for us to figure out how many hours anybody's going to spend and what exactly they're going to be doing. So while we wanted to make sure that we had continuity, we also wanted to be fiscally prudent and conservative. But your points are well taken as far as the where people should be, and that can certainly be addressed.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Florence Jansen for the record. Lynn has worked extensively with our navigators, and knowing how they are so, there isn't like a one-on-one, person-to-person to give a warm, as he says, like the call center would do. Our navigators, I think, are just amazing, because it really takes a special touch to reach out to the underserved population we're talking about. And perhaps as the call center gets better and more dependable than it used to be, it may take over a larger portion of the issues, and the navigators won't be called on, except, as Lynn pointed out, circumstances are they may still need a lot of hand-holding and one-on-one to get enrolled. Anyway, I just want to reinforce that our navigators have been amazing. I'd like to propose to this to the board that is there some way, now that all of this change has occurred, I'd like to get some navigator feedback, because I haven't heard from them much about how much they're doing out there with all of the new things we've implemented. The stores that have been amazing, all the enrollment. I would like to know how it's affected the population they're serving. Have they seen less of a need? Are they still busier than ever and feel undermanned? I would like to have some feedback from them on the new dynamics that are going on. Okay.
We'll be happy to get it for you.
Because maybe it isn't as big a situation as we think, and maybe it's still huge.
Right. Right.
But the navigators, they would know better than anyone. They're in the trenches.
I will just make a comment on that, and I'm sure that the executive director will bring that information back. But given the fact that we don't have people calling the exchange day after day after day with problems, indicates that the technology is working much better. I get calls from some of our brokers, and they tell me the difference is not night and day, but it's light years away different. That, not that it doesn't have some issues in it, but from where they came from in 2014 to where we are today in 2015, it is so dramatically different and so much easier. So I'm sure the navigators are experiencing that as well too.
And that is being part of the point, which is last year at this time they could only enroll at best 7 or 8 per person a day, no matter how much they wanted. And sometimes
they were lucky not that
one, but by the very end of the shift, they had moved from 1 to about 7 or 8. You don't think so?
No.
Okay, because they were telling me they could almost do, the one I talked with, almost 1 an hour by the end of the thing, but I hear you. The bottom line is now that's all changed.
Yeah.
And that's why it'd be more enlightening to see, not just with the improved technology, but everything, the stores, everything, how many people are showing up. Aren't they having to track how many people come in and how many people they process and how many people
the enrollment stores.
See, because they know they're supposed to be tracking, right? How many people actually?
We do all of those things.
The navigators like Care and Ramirez, how many contacts? As our market people like to say, touch points, and have those, how many filled out applications successfully compared to, and if they really are having, because we have to look at their new contracts and consider, we need to know if they're really, if everyone is diverting away from them to our stores, or if they're really needed.
Madam Chair, if I may, we monitor everything. And when I say we monitor everything, what that means is we have weekly calls with the LCB and others in government to find out if their constituents are calling them. We talk to brokers. We talk to agents. We talk to navigator groups. We track how many people come into every store every day. We know how many fill out applications. We know how many are seen by brokers and agents. We know how many are seen by navigators. We know how many people leave without being seen. We have all of this information. So we do track all of this internally. We are aware of all of this internally. I will share with you that one of my joys has been replicating Barbara's experience, where I don't have people calling and saying, this doesn't work, or that doesn't work, or gee, last year was so terrible we barely want to speak to you. I mean, I think that the point being made is sound, which is that with the technology no longer being problematic and off the table, that doesn't mean that it's not important, the job that our navigators do. They do show up at our enrollment stores, but even more than that, when someone whom they have seen has a problem or has an issue, more often than not, they will reach out to that navigator organization to see if they can get additional assistance. And they have been great in terms of spending the time assisting those people and making sure that they get the help that they need. So I guess the point that I would be making is we actually keep track of all these things, and we do know these things, and we are learning, I guess, as we go along, because it's all new. And you have early in the open enrollment process, a lot of people coming into the stores, and then as things die down, it goes back down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down. So it's not a nice even keel. But I think that whether you spoke to the brokers and agents, or whether you spoke to the navigators, or whoever you would speak with, you will find that they're able to assist more people than they were last time out.
Let me make a suggestion. On this agenda item is a report only, so there isn't any action to it. But since you are tracking all of that, I think the board would be very interested in seeing what that tracking model looks like and where we are. Why don't you bring that back in February?
We'll be happy to share that.
Madam Chair, and I would ask that this, I guess, I know I was involved a little bit in preparing the agenda, and I thought when we had kind of worked on this issue that everything was just going to be status quo, basically, from the current grants through the end of March. And so it sounds like there's been quite a few changes. And so I would love for this item to be on next month's agenda as an action item as well, for us to either review, ratify. I'm not exactly sure where everything is, but this needs a little finessing.
We're happy to do that. That won't be an issue.
Any other comments? All right, thank you. Let's move along to agenda item number 9, which is the report on the
Eight.
I'm sorry. Update on the Consumer Assistance and Marketing and Outreach Report.
All right. Tyler Klimas for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair. We've kind of touched on a few of these things. I only have a couple updates, besides, of course, the marketing outreach report that Steph from KPS3 is here to deliver. But kind of as mentioned, I wanted to give you a quick update, and it will be quick, on the constituent service calls and the navigator calls that we do. Those are 2 separate calls. The first one, as I explained last board meeting, is with basically the constituent services offices for state agencies, the governor's office, the Consumer Health Assistance Office, as well as the LCB and our congressional representatives and, of course, our state officers. All of their offices join this call. I have nothing new to report. They've all gone very well. Of course, we've only had 3 since the last board meeting, but everything seems to be fine. They still remain helpful, the calls, even though they don't last very long in length. There's still an opportunity for everybody to share their concerns or issues if they receive them. To this date, we don't really hear much. The navigator calls, and Sean has been leading the charge on these weekly. And I just want to offer, Dr. Jameson, this goes to you. When you ask how the navigator organizations are doing, well, we'd love to have you on any call at any time. So just let me know. We have them every Wednesday morning. Again, a lot of times, especially during open enrollment, they don't last very long. Everybody's very busy. I see Ted's here. He participates as well. But just a way for everybody to talk about what's going on in the stores, in the field, in the rurals, our boots on the ground, as you say. So they've been helpful. Shauna leads those. And if you have anything to add, Shauna, you're welcome to jump in. But anyway, not much to report from them. But everything is going well thus far. There's 2 things before I just mentioned February 15th, 2 things that aren't on here that I wanted to mention that I think from a consumer assistance advocacy role, they're pretty exciting for us. I worked with Vice Chair Atkins, who chairs the CAAC subcommittee, which we will get fired up again in March as we go into the interim between open enrollment periods. The American Indian, Alaskan Native groups, the tribal groups, we do a monthly tribal consultation with them. And so, a lot of their parameters around enrollment for American Indians and Alaskan Natives are very different than others. But we were able to offer them a position or a seat on the CAAC subcommittee. So I think that's important to have that voice on that committee, and we're looking forward to that, and so are they. The second is also Vice Chair Atkins and myself talked about was the LGBT community. This week, for the last 4 weeks of open enrollment, the feds, CMS, have focused on a different group of the population every week. Last week, I believe, was women, and they did a few activities surrounding women and enrollment. This week, there was a few this week, but one was LGBT community. Out to Enroll is a organization that focuses specifically on the LGBT community and enrollment surrounding that community. They're doing various events. It just so happens that Las Vegas is hosting a huge event with the LGBT community tomorrow, Friday. It's called the Sin City Shootout. And it is, if I can say it right, it is the biggest national LGBT sports competition. And it's pretty exciting for Las Vegas. I think the Convention and Visitors Authority is a huge sponsor of it. But anyway, Out to Enroll is going to have a huge presence. Now, of course, this makes sense for the feds, as these are competitors from all over the state, all over the nation. However, we reached out. KPS3 was a part of that as well, and we will have a presence there to help. And I think it's just a great way to partner with that community, and it's just nothing but good things. And so I thought that was worth mentioning.
Thank you.
Besides that, plans for February 15th. I just wanted to touch on it. You'll hear more about it, certainly as the weeks go along. We anticipate this to be a huge weekend. It was last open enrollment cycle. There's no reason to think that it won't be the same this open enrollment cycle. So, of course, I just wanted to touch on things. We'll give you specifics. I believe we have, I know we have a board meeting before then. So you'll have all the hammered out details then. Of course, we'll have media alignment, press releases will go out, we'll have TV and radio ads that speak specifically to the events we'll have on February 15th. And then, of course, our partners, which have been great throughout open enrollment, will be participating as well. It's going to be very much like the first day, the first weekend, which was very successful. We're going to have 2 locations in the north and south. Staff, I believe you touched on this in your report as well, so I won't go too far into it. But in Southern Nevada, we'll have a health fair like we did on the first weekend, as well as our enrollment store at the Boulevard Mall. Up north, we will have the enrollment store as well. I believe we'll be utilizing the Ramirez Group's office as our second location / overflow for that weekend. But I'll pass along more details as we get them locked in as far as locations and exactly how it'll play out. We're excited, but just to let you know, we are anticipating that to be a big weekend, and we will be ready when the time comes. So before I turn it over to Steph for the marketing and outreach report, happy to answer any questions so we can save them until Steph is finished.
Any questions from up north for Tyler? Nope. All right.
Okay, great. Stephanie Cruz, KPS3 for the record. I'm going to do a brief overview on a number of facets relating to marketing and outreach, including media, outreach, the enrollment stores. We're going to talk a little bit more about the website itself, and then our re-enrollment initiative update. So I am moving to page 3 in your attachment. This is about the traditional media campaign, the paid advertising, in other words. Our quarter 4 metrics delivered through the end of last year. We've exceeded the metrics that we anticipated exceeding for most of all of our media, including TV, radio, out of home, which is transit and billboards, and print. So TV, you'll see that our frequency well exceeded the frequency goal, as we did with radio. And I think that relates to our media department really negotiating a lot of the value added. As you can see that so far through December 14th of 2014, we've negotiated about $289,000 of free stuff, which is more spots than we paid for. So we're getting good value for the money. I think, again, broadcast, in other words, TV and radio have been very effective in this campaign. I know when I am home and I'm watching things that aren't appropriate for my age, I see the Young Invincible television ads. They were obviously another big target of ours this year. The stores-focused advertising, as I reported in the board meeting last month, we really upped the stores-focused advertising starting January 1. Got through the holidays because people weren't necessarily thinking about enrolling for insurance. They were thinking about going to the boulevard and shopping for their Christmas gifts. But we really have upped the amount of advertising that we're doing specific to the stores. And I think that's going to be very helpful as we try to drive people who really do want in-person help to get to one of those two locations. We're also increasing our frequency for the Young Invincibles and the Hispanic market, the un and underinsured, which is our target audience. But we're really going to be pushing a lot more intensity in those two audiences. And if you remember when we did our focus groups with our target audience, we had a second concept that was very well received. It was called By the Numbers. And especially in the Young Invincibles market, they really liked it. It compares directly the cost of insurance to the cost of several things that you might encounter when you have a health issue, like tonsils out or a broken ankle. So this is an animated spot. It's very hip. And it's very targeted to the Young Invincibles, and we will be launching that on YouTube and also on 60-second television ads. So again, that's going to be really targeting Young Invincibles. So we'll use our social media platforms and really go after the Young Invincibles with that spot because it resonated with them. So that's a new concept that we're integrating into our current campaign. Moving on to page 4, this is the digital advertising campaign. If you remember, one of the areas that we really focused on was digital advertising because many folks in this population do not receive advertising messages through traditional media. So digital and a more online approach to reaching our target audiences has been very important. We've had 22 million impressions to date through our digital advertising. That's just through December. The click-through rate is high compared to industry standard overall. They've been very effective in driving the consumers to the pre-screener tool, which is really where we want them to be. We want them to go to pre-screening to see whether or not they qualify. Over 3,000 visitors from the banner ads alone have been driven to the pre-screener tool. The pre-roll video, which is the video that pops up prior to you being allowed to watch what you want to watch on YouTube or some other website, has produced 5.6 million minutes of viewed content, which is a lot of minutes. People, once they're clicking on them, they're actually watching them, which is a good sign. The Pandora radio campaign is delivered 1.1 million impressions, and it also has a very, very strong click-through rate. We also have re-enrollment specific digital ads. So those are the ones that we know we're trying to target people who had insurance from last year, had a plan that we're trying to get to re-enroll. Those are performing even better than our general digital campaign. And then the Spanish re-enrollment ads are performing really well at almost 1% click-through rate, which is very, very high. And the nice thing this year, by having control of the front end of the website, we can embed tracking mechanisms on our website so we can see what digital ads are delivering people and how far they're going into the site based on which ad. So that allows us to alter the messaging and really say, okay, this ad's really performing well. We're going to pop a lot more of those in than what we had of another ad. So that's a real benefit to having control of the website this year, as well as many other benefits. Speaking of which, moving on to page 5, the website update, we've had well over 288,000 visits. It's more than doubled since our last report. I think there's a growing interest in it as people are getting close to deadlines. Over 177,000 unique visitors and 811,000 page views, which is, for us, that means that people are spending some time. They're looking around on the website and getting information. Visitor activity, over 94,000 clicks through the pre-screener tool, which is excellent. That's nearly tripled since our last report. over 30,000 clicks to manage current 2014 plans, which has doubled again, 28,000 plus clicks to healthcare.gov, directly to healthcare.gov, again, that tripled, and then 23,000 clicks to Access Nevada or Nevada Checkup. So people are using our website to access their information about Medicaid. Moving on to page 6 for outreach and enrollment. We've had 137 outreach events and distribution points since our start in August. We've had a very good cost per touch, 17 cents per touch. The campaign goal is to reach 500,000 people through outreach alone, and we're pacing, we'll meet that and well exceed it. So the type of things that comprise a touch point. Consumers at events which see the brand and are exposed to our message. One-on-one conversations, which is where we really want to spend our time. We want to have our outreach staff have conversations with people, direct them to a store, direct them to a navigator, direct them to a broker. I mean, that's the gold standard for us, is those conversations. And then we have wonderful partners that allow us to distribute materials, government, nonprofit, religious. There's a number of groups who allow us to distribute information directly to their consumers and their customers. Upcoming events, we'll be doing more tabling at malls. We have a plan to be at the basketball games, the college basketball games, health clubs and gyms. We feel that that's a good place to get young invincibles. Health fairs, and as Tyler mentioned, LGBT events. We've got a strong presence and good connections, and we are going to be doing even more of those. Some great news is that we are still having a lot of distribution of materials at the DMVs. There's other places that we've been able to continue to distribute materials for, but we've really made some progress with some of our casinos. We have back of the house signage for employees at GSR, which is a very large casino in northern Nevada. And we made a great connection through MGM corporate wide to have a flyer distributed to their part-time and per diem employees. So that was a huge coup for us that we were very, very excited about. So that is in many, many people's hands, distributed through their HR department. Moving on to page 7, a little bit about the enrollment stores. We have seen 3,560 customers through January 11th. And we are increasing the amount of advertising. We started on January 1, and it will be a very intensive campaign through the 15th to continue to create awareness of the store locations and what they can get help with there. So television and radio will increase. We're placing billboards near the Boulevard Mall that are directional, that actually point, that says, here's an enrollment store. And then we have those cute little sign twirlers on the street corners in northern Nevada that are twirling the signs and telling them where the store is in northern Nevada. There is a one-day satellite enrollment center open today at Durango Hills Community Center. I talked to Katie this morning. She says the media were all there this morning thanks to Tyler's efforts. So we anticipate that, I heard it on the radio as I was driving over here, so I think there's going to be a high degree of awareness that today is the 15th, and that means something to people. And so there will be some a pickup of activity there this afternoon. And then, as Tyler mentioned, on February 15th, we have several events in northern and southern Nevada, the enrollment stores in the Ramirez office in northern Nevada, and then a location to be determined in southern Nevada, but it will need to be big. Based on last year's attendance, we know we're going to need a large center. And then finally, page 8, our re-enrollment initiative. We've had 3 sets of letters, 3 sets of emails, an oversized postcard that has gone out since the start in October through December. We'll have one more large, very pointed message on a postcard that will be distributed the week of the 19th with an urgency message about February 15th. Using our metrics from our emails, we can tell who has opened them and who hasn't. And so those who haven't opened the emails, we call if they have a telephone number on record. We actually have an auto calling service that delivers them a message about what's going on. And we'll follow up with another call the first week of February to those who didn't answer or listen to the message that they got the first time. So we will be diligent in pursuing this audience. Our retargeting efforts for the digital advertising has served over 348,000 impressions to this audience. So we are really working diligently to try to reach this audience with every possible means that we can, knowing that the database changes quickly sometimes. But we've really reached out with them with a lot of messaging and using all kinds of media. And that is my report.
Thank you, Jen. Do we have any questions? Yes, please.
Just a comment that after we talked about reaching out to some of those casinos, it's really great to see you reached out and that they're doing that. Maybe you can go back to some of the other major ones that didn't participate and show how the other MGM is participating and get all of them on board on the strip.
We're working.
Yeah, that's great. And then you had mentioned, we talked about maybe when you came next time, you might bring some of these flyers and things that you pass out.
Oh, okay, sure. Totally.
I saw a few out there as well, but
Totally. Some of the different type of stuff
sure.
that you are giving out for us to just hands-on.
Any other questions? Yes.
For the record, thank you for the report. Just really big numbers. I have a couple of questions and one, I guess one or two suggestions. At what point, I know, and I think I shot Tyler an email about this morning, at what point do we start re-engaging with our own social networking? It sounds like this is the last 30 days to push the Young Invincibles, which is the social networking. Mm-hmm. We've kind of have not been using our Facebook page, completely understand why. Mm-hmm. But I think we've moved past those challenges. We have a Twitter account that we're not using, and I'm just wondering at what point do we start kind of like going all in with that group in addition with the YouTube and everything. So what's kind of the plan for the social networking?
We've talked briefly, and I think it would be a good time to re-engage. The tone certainly on those platforms have changed dramatically, mm-hmm. and I think there could actually be a good expert conversation and some good advice and how-to information, as opposed to people using it for their own personal soapbox. So,
yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to add to that. You and I had a few conversations about it before we started. I mean, basically, it boils down to Facebook is something of a two-way conversation. Mm-hmm. It's a question and an answer, and so if you open that up, which it's very important, and you're absolutely right, the Young Invincible crowd, it's a huge outlet for that. But when you open that up, you have to fully expect that it is now your responsibility to be able to handle the traffic. Mm-hmm. So if somebody asks a question or posts a comment, we need to answer. It's our responsibility, and that's the responsibility you take on when we open up a network like that. So I agree with you. It's something now that the tone is a little bit better. We just have to make sure that we are capable of handling that type of traffic, because it is our responsibility to answer each and every one of those.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, and Madam Vice Chair, one of the things that I would point out is every day, every morning, I get a report on every mention of us in every media. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you that some of my concerns about the ways that we are referred to or otherwise dealt with remain. There's some detritus out there that continues to be a problem. And so while I think that the movement into the social media is a great idea, we have to be very careful with the interactivity.
Completely get it, but it's the only way you're really reaching the Young Invincibles. I mean, I've been to, a gazillion conferences on all the marketing and all that for that group. And for the most part, that whole group, if you're not on Facebook, they don't know you exist. And that's kind of the very summary of that group. And so I want to make sure I completely agree. And like I said, we had talked about this at the beginning, kind of not sure how this was going to go. But at some point, we're doing great. I mean, we're doing really well. And I think we have to start being okay with that.
Absolutely. And
not scared of that. So again, I don't know. I'm not saying, oh my gosh, do it right now. It was more of a question to keep thinking about. Twitter is less of that. Mm-hmm. Less of the back and forth. You don't need to answer. You have to kind of take your lumps where you find them. But I just, as part of the entire social networking kind of field. So I just wanted to ask that question. I have two other comments. If I can, or do you want to talk
just to
about
follow up on your Twitter comment, because that's what I was thinking about too. And the Young Invincibles, Facebook is passé. They're not even into it anymore. But the Twitter, now, with the with the
Instagram.
yeah, and
It is
Instagram and the pictures they can post.
I don't know either.
That is it, and that is, as she said, there's not that worry of the two-way. Yes, they post and it's out there viral, but for us to aggressively push that, that's a much safer avenue, and that's actually where they really are. They're not even at
Sure.
Facebook anymore.
And Madam Chair, if I could add, just two follow-ups to that, and you've hit the nail on the head. You're absolutely right. One thing is, we made sure to include that in the RFP. That's a part of it. We fully anticipate this not to be a permanent move when we made that decision for this open enrollment period. So you're absolutely right, and we're on the same page. So that is a component, and we will see that with these proposals. Secondly, Twitter, just to follow up and on that, we found that Twitter, and it will be certainly a component going forward, but that was really an avenue for the media. We did post-enrollment statistics in the past, and with the Young Invincibles, they're not really excited to follow you really on Twitter. I think, but you can use initiatives, and the initiatives exist to get followers, and I think that will be part of it if we do Twitter, which we likely will going forward. You can do contests, things like that, to get followers. That has to be a part of it. But last year with our Twitter account, it was for the media, and we chose to do the press releases, the partnerships with CMS and their press releases as far as enrollment statistics and updates. But if you remember correctly, they did like, website is down, things like that with Twitter. That was mostly what they used that for. To get out with the media and the press. But
we've got good stuff now.
Yes, we do, and you are absolutely right, and we're excited to fire those back up as well.
And of course, we still have, not for the record, we still have a few people who are on air. Just like this morning on Channel 13, we had somebody who was rehashing something that happened last year. So we still have a few of them.
You do.
You always will.
Yes, we always
Some people like being negative all the time.
Madam Chair, yeah. So I think I have one. So all good. I want to ask a question, I guess, about going forward and how to be even better. So that's the tone of this question. So the number of impressions and hits and viewings and all of your metrics and your data and everything. These numbers are huge. They look huge to me. I don't know that I necessarily have a good context for this or understand it completely. But does that mean in a very clear way that if we get on the digital campaign, we got 22 million impressions to date, and that has led to approximately 47,000 people signing up. Does that mean we need 44 million to get 94,000? 94,000. Yes, that was right. My math was right. I wasn't even thinking. How does that work to kind of go, here's how we're going to get the next 20,000? And I guess in addition to that, I'd love maybe at the end of open enrollment and in the summer to kind of get an update on our numbers. Not our numbers necessarily, but the state. I'm assuming between Medicaid, us, and employers just adding insurance because, right? So there's a lot more people insured in the state. So what is our new number of people that we're kind of going to be targeting for the next open enrollment? Is that 500,000, 200,000, a million, whatever that number is? So does that mean, oh my gosh, we have to spend double the amount of money to get 44 million impressions and 500,000 people at the website in order to hit the next group of population? So I'm just wondering how do you think about that, and how does this work?
Okay, Stephanie Cruz for the record. There is a point in advertising world, where you, between public relations, advertising, social media, all the other ways that you can throw a message at your target audience, where you get saturated. We are not at a saturation point. We were lucky this year that we had a fairly high awareness level within our target audience coming into this year, so that's benefited. We haven't had to spend as much money. I don't think you ever want to get to the point where you find that line where it's a law of diminishing returns. I think that there's many other ways to do it. I don't think you have to double your advertising to achieve double your enrollment or double your click-throughs. You're always going to have a group of people who, no matter what you tell them and what the message is, who will have their own reasons for not. One, probably they'll go online because they're looking, but they probably have a reason why they're not going to purchase or purchase at that time, or they're not motivated, or they can't afford it at that time. So I think no matter what you throw at them in terms of advertising, public relations, messaging, everything, there will just be some people who will never, they'll be led to water, but they're not going to drink. So you're not saturated yet in terms of the numbers of people, then the total number of impressions and the total number of times somebody sees the ad. I mean, you're achieving a lot. However, I don't think you're ever going to reach that point. I think you'd have to spend way too much money to reach saturation, and I don't think your returns are going to be worth it in terms of payment.
Madam Chair, but I really think that Ms. Atkins' question about the number of people who are now insured. You know, when we started this, we were talking about there were 196,000 uninsured Nevadans, or maybe it was 696,000. I've forgotten. It was a large number, you know, and we were planning to get the first year some large number of those people. Well, of course, we had to readjust all of that. So I think it would behoove us to find out how many uninsured Nevadans are there now that would
in our target.
possibly be eligible for our plan. So I think that would be
well, and everybody's eligible to go through. We want, I mean, we want people who are over the subsidy level to come through too. I mean, I think the issue is if you figure out it's 400,000 or 500,000 or 600,000, how many of them are probably Medicaid eligible, but the rest are eligible to come through, and we want them all to come through, right? For a variety of reasons. So yeah, so I think we're at the point where we need.
I think we need that information. Yes.
I'd just like to add one thing too, and I think going into the next open enrollment period as well, I mean, keeping budget in mind, I think now more than ever, efficiency is what we're going to have to focus on. Mm-hmm. But really that comes with the post-campaign results, the post-campaign surveys, and certainly whatever information we will receive from CMS, who's obviously using our platform, because that's going to be the key. How far we can drill down in the details, not just how many people enrolled or didn't enroll. Who are they? What are the demographics? Because that's how we're going to target this. I mean, you can have 100 million impressions. If they're not to the right people or the right group, it doesn't matter. Right. So really, we're going to see after this period, I think, what information we're dealing with. That's going to be a challenge, one I think we can do, but that's what I would be looking for, so we can be efficient and really get to that population.
Thank you. And then my last thing is, the DMV I know also has a TV that's, are we able to get on that?
I believe we are.
We're on the TV thing.
Yeah, we were last year and we renegotiated that.
Excellent. That's it for me.
And I do have some materials.
You have some materials to pass out.
Unbeknownst to me, I have some materials.
Thank you. I wish we had those in my office.
Thank you so much.
And these are more for outreach pieces.
Let's move on to the next agenda item then. Pass those out.
Do we have any of these in Spanish? Can I have some in Spanish too?
Thank you. I have this.
Oh, here, I have it in Spanish.
Take it to your office.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else need you? One object Spanish. What else? Great. I have English and Spanish. You want to do more? Another set? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great report. And like Ms. Edkins, I'm not sure I understand all these touch points, but the numbers are huge.
Yeah, I'm good. I've got one of each of these.
Anyway, next agenda item is number 9. It's the initial report on the transition of the plan management process.
That's correct. That will be presented by Ms. Rich.
Okay, Ms. Rich.
Thank you. For the record, Laura Rich. I'm going to be providing information on the plan management transition process coming from the DOI to the exchange. So to give a little background, during the 2014 and 2015 plan years, many of the plan management duties plan management and certification functions of the exchange were performed by the Division of Insurance. So grant funding previously permitted the Division of Insurance to contract with 2 additional staff to support a DOI staff member in those plan management duties. They perform duties such as form and rate filing, plan benefit design, network adequacy, plan review, and plan certification. So recently, CMS has issued a timeline which is now significantly reduced. In prior years, this timeline for submission was in July, and it has now been moved up to April this year. So final certification and plan uploading must be completed by July rather than September. So this is creating some issues with workflow, and as a result, the exchange and DOI have discussed options available to meet the expedited timetable and ensure adherence to these new guidelines. So in this transition, lack of staffing resources coupled with this tighter CMS guidelines, the DOI has now limited resources to continue performing some of these tasks. With the understanding that no exchange staff member has the knowledge base necessary to immediately take on these responsibilities, the DOI and the exchange have agreed to make the 2016 plan year a transition year. So the DOI will offer the exchange staff training and assistance necessary throughout this process to ensure that the exchange has the ability and the knowledge necessary to fully assume these responsibilities and take this on fully for the 2017 plan year. So while the DOI will continue to carry out some of these plan management responsibilities, that they're going to retain some duties requiring a lot more subject matter expertise, such as rate review and form filing. And the exchange is going to be assuming more of the exchange-specific and overall consumer experience roles that take place in this process. So by managing the SURF process, including things like plan submissions, plan preview, and being the final authority on certification, the exchange will be playing a more active role in not only how QHP plans are certified, but how they are displayed to consumers on healthcare.gov. So we're now at the point where we have met with the DOI, the exchange has met with the DOI, and we are establishing the scope and resources necessary for this transition. To begin with, the exchange will be bringing on 1 additional full-time employee. This is a vacant position currently in the exchange to support myself with this project. Additional funds have already been budgeted for future years to support the time and effort associated with the plan management functions. And initial training has already begun. And due to this shorter window imposed by CMS, we've already started the planning and implementation process that is required. So things like webinars, establishing cutoff dates and things like that we do have control over. With the DOI's involvement. Also, I'd like to thank Commissioner Kipper, who's offered us full access to his staff in support of this transition, and hopefully this will be a smooth process, and by the 2017 plan year, we'll be able to fully assume these responsibilities and free up some of the DOI's responsibilities in that process. So with that, I'll take any questions, comments.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Rich?
Madam Chair, if I might, for the record, Scott Kipper, and I just wanted to reiterate the very full report that Laura just gave us. That there is a great deal of cooperation going on, continuing to go on between the DOI and the exchange staff on this issue particularly. It doesn't diminish the division's responsibility for compliance and rate review and rate approval, but it does enhance the process that will be used to make sure that these products get ready for the consumer and the consumer's view. So we do appreciate everything that the exchange staff has undertaken, and we look forward to a very smooth transition.
Thank you, Commissioner Kipper. I know, and I've heard from our executive director how grateful he is to you for having your staff assist us in this transition. So thank you from the board as well. All right, if we don't have any other questions, comments about this agenda item, we'll move on to agenda item number 10, which is the update on the closeout, the Xerox technical closeout. I can read that. I'm good.
And that will be presented by Mr. Haycock.
Mr. Haycock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Damon Haycock for the record. So this will be the first report on a series of reports that should be coming back to the board when the board meets on the update on the Xerox technical closeout. So a little brief background. On December 12th of last year, Executive Director Mr. Gilbert here repurposed current project management staff, recently freed up, of course, by our successful launch of open enrollment, to concentrate our efforts on the Xerox technical closeout. Previous staff that was assigned to that project were also refocused to dedicate all of their resources to other critical projects of consumer case resolution and reconciliation for those plan year 2014 accounts. So in a nutshell, we wanted to make sure collectively across the exchange that we were focusing all our attentions to all of the critical issues that were part of the Xerox closeout, both technical and the consumer case resolution. So this report is specifically geared towards that technical closeout function. So the initial team was designated. It was myself with overall project management oversight. We have Laura Rich, our quality assurance officer, who will oversee the tax season processes to include the 1095A form development and IRS reporting. We have Nick Cranston, our IT analyst, who will help oversee the data retention and BOSS decommissioning. And of course, Carrie Eaton, a finance and research officer, who will continue to provide us excellent financial analysis in support of our closeout activities. And so the first thing that we did was we wanted to make sure that we could wrap our arms around the process and to make it definitive and manageable by breaking it into some categories. And we felt that these categories or closeout functions encompass the following. Of course, the BOSS decommissioning. How are we going to break away from the system that Nevadans have been using for plan year 2014, and what are all the technical requirements associated with that decommissioning? What are we going to do with the data retention? The federal government requires that we retain data for up to 10 years. And how are we going to manage that data and access and reconstruct that data in case there are requests from a legal perspective, operational perspective, audit perspective, what have you? Of course, what are we going to do with the call center closeout from Xerox, which we addressed earlier in the Consumer Assistance Center proposal you heard? The 1095A process. This year is the first year, and for us, luckily, the only year that we, as the exchange, will be responsible to issue out 1095A forms. And so we have to make sure that we can do that successfully to the best of our abilities with the resources and the data that we have available. And then finally, as Mr. Gilbert has eloquently put in his director's report, and as you've heard throughout the reports today, everything we do needs to have concrete financial analysis. We need to ensure that we're not only solving problems today, but we're solving them appropriately, fiscally sound, and also with a long-term slant so that we do not set the exchange up for failure in future years. So the first thing we did in any other project that we start is we held a kickoff meeting. And the first opportunity we had after holidays and leave and people finally catching their breath after open enrollment was January 7th. And if we could go and hop in a time machine and go back in time, we'd have loved to have started this project, last summer. But because of the truncated time frame, we hit the ground running and we held that meeting. We traveled to Henderson, Nevada, and talked with the Xerox project management staff, their leads that we requested for each of these areas, so we could have consistent and thorough communication moving forward. The first thing we recognized, of course, is that there was no official federal guidance that determined what the BOSS decommissioning would look like. We were told and had many opportunities to have conversations in the past about what the IRS or CMS would require, but no actual specific guidance, which I can say as of this morning, we received decommissioning guidance and data retention guidance from our state officer. So that is an update that is not in this report. So all parties involved were provided roles and responsibilities, and we really outlined what needed to happen to try to meet this March 31st date that people have been working to with the exchange for months. So for BOSS decommissioning, as you've heard me say a few times earlier, March 31st of this year is when they are supposed to shut down, shut off, no longer be accessible to the public. And so all connectivity to the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services, that connectivity where people apply through our web portal or Xerox's web portal, and then get an eligibility determination from the Healthcare Reform Eligibility Engine at Welfare, that connectivity will be disconnected as of 8 a.m. on April 1st. That was as of the latest meeting we had, I believe, yesterday. And so that connectivity will no longer exist. And we don't foresee that being any type of risk because people are not initially applying for health insurance any longer, and qualifying life events and changes in circumstance and 60 days after the end of the calendar year of last year. So I believe that date is March 2nd. So this provides the rest of that month to continue to have connectivity if we run into issues, but then it will be shut off. So based on the current open cases that exist right now with Xerox and our insurance carriers, some outstanding reconciliation requirements, we are definitely concerned of that March 31st date, and we are trying to analyze it fully. And we are in coordination with Xerox to see what is the availability to continue to have access, whether the system is left on or whether we're able to go through a liaison or proxy, so that way we can continue to assist Nevadans who may still have issues with their 2014 plan year accounts after Xerox is scheduled to depart. Then we move on to data retention. And there was an original plan that Xerox submitted to the exchange, which of course coincided with the BOSS decommissioning. So as of March 31st, the BOSS was supposed to be turned off, and within the next week, the data that was that fulfilled all of the 2014 plan years accounts was supposed to be transferred over to the exchange. With all of that raw data and, of course, a process or a roadmap on how we were to reconstruct them in the future. If we had any requests for information or what have you, we would have to go in there and take that big blob of data and reconstruct it into something usable, readable, and accessible so we can answer questions, be it for ongoing litigation, reporting, auditing, or even something as simple as 1095A form corrections. The problem with this initial transfer plan is it was a one-way street, and that Xerox was, per the contract, required to transfer data, but we had not finalized how we were going to receive that data or store that data. And so we are in the process now of finalizing options. There are multiple options on the table, and we are looking at utilizing both state resources as well as third-party resources to store securely and safely all of the individual information from 2014 plan year. We had asked CMS to provide some form of guidance on data retention, and like I said, we received it this morning, and that is under current analysis today. I'm not going to go into much detail on the call center closeout because we talked about that in the Consumer Assistance Center proposal, but as of right now, March 31st, the call center is scheduled per the project plan to close down. And based on your actions today, it appears that the concept for the Consumer Assistance Center has been approved, and we will flesh out those details, and barring any obstacles, we'll be prepared to assume those functions as early as April 1st. The 1095A process management and reporting, the original plan was that Xerox, of course, would develop and distribute this IRS required form for the enrollees no later than January 31st of this year. Their plan is to start sending out those 1095s in their first waves as early as the 21st of this month, and will be completed no later than the 31st. So we have full confidence that the 1095A forms will go out on time. There is a revision process in place for those 1095A forms if they do prove inaccurate and the required reporting mechanism to the IRS is in place and has been fully tested. And so when a 1095A form goes out to a consumer, to a Nevadan, and an additional report is sent to the IRS. So when that Nevadan files their taxes, those numbers link up. And so if there is a change that needs to be made to that 1095A form, we will not only have, or Xerox will have the 1095A form revised and corrected, but also the reporting mechanism to the IRS will then follow suit. The exchange, of course, is analyzing options to continue to provide these requirements after Xerox leaves. We believe we have a solution that can be built by our current contractor, and we are going to be in conversations as early as tomorrow to determine if the storage location that we have in mind will be sufficient, appropriate, and available. And then, of course, finally, we can't stress this enough, as been mentioned repeatedly today, the financial analysis. All factors of this closeout are being analyzed for fiscal impact, both short-term and long-term. And as Mr. Gilbert has mentioned, as we must sustain ourselves without federal grant funding, all the decisions that we make as Xerox exits and the responsibilities that the exchange must take over must be financially sound to ensure our future success and sustainability. So at this time, the only financial analysis available is shown in the previous Consumer Assistance Center report as far as what we were doing with that part of the closeout. But as we finalize the options and recommendations for the rest of the technical closeout, the decommissioning, the data retention, all of those will go through the same rigorous analysis that has been done on that call center. And with that, I will take any questions or comments.
Questions? Mr.
When they're done.
Okay, go ahead and I'll ask mine later.
Anybody else has a question? Thank you, Damon. So do we really think there's not going to be a problem with the 1095s?
Absolutely not. We are anticipating that there will be issues. The reconciliations that affect the data that populate those forms and those reports will obviously not be completed by the 21st of this month. And I know you're going to get a report from Mr. Roos that goes over that reconciliation effort, so I won't steal her thunder. But my understanding is that we are going to have to send out our first round, and it is our anticipation that there will be corrections thereafter.
So I think two big questions. One is this call center that we're talking about establishing. If it were me and I got a wrong 1095, I'd call the call center. So I'm assuming they're going to be able to assist people with that.
That would be correct assumption.
Okay. And then my second question, or my second comment is, this to me seems like the next potential wave of consumer problems and drama akin to what happened before. So I would hope that we get in front of whatever this is. And even if we think it's going to be a problem, that people know we think it's going to be a problem, and that what we're doing to fix it and what people can kind of do. I don't want to pretend that it's all going to be fine and then it's not.
Madam Chair, if I may, or would you like to respond?
No, I have a question. I mean, hopefully Shauna's going to give us some news in the next report that the reconciliation is going to be complete in short time. But that being said, I hope that the 1095As that are going out on the 21st are only those that have been totally reconciled. Is there any way that we can guarantee that happens?
May I respond?
Yes.
Right, and I will actually sort of deal with both your questions, if I may. I think that over the course of probably the past 5 months, we've taken pains to be transparent. I don't think we've run away from our history. I don't think we've run away from our problems, and we're not going to start doing that now. We know and understand what's coming down the pike. I promise you that. We know and understand that there will be consumers who are affected. We know and understand that they're going to be needing guidance and assistance. And I will tell you that Tyler and I and Damon and every member of the staff is painfully aware of the fact that there will be additional issues that we have to deal with. You know, we steel ourselves by saying, well, this is still coming from a year ago. That doesn't make it any better. I wish I could tell you how large a problem we have. I wish I could tell you how small a problem we have. All I can tell you is we know and understand that there will be issues, but I can't give you a number. What we will do is we will develop a process and a system that will help those consumers who contact us. We won't let them down. We won't turn them away. We won't say, you know, we can't help you. And we won't give them 10-day delays or 30-day delays or 3 months delays as we have in the past. That's probably as good as I can make it.
I guess if I might, I guess what I'm even suggesting is getting in front of it in the sense of making communication with the consumers now before they get anything, to kind of say, heads up, here's what's coming. There may be some error. I think we need to.
We're doing those things.
Okay.
We're doing those things.
And almost to the extent that every 1095A has a letter attached to it.
That will happen. That's actually happening.
There is a potential that there may be a...
We don't say that specifically. What we do say... I think that's a question as to whether you invite problems rather than having them reported to you. But what I will tell you is this, and we've worked very hard on this. There will be written communications that go with every single 1095 that say, this is what this is. This is why you've received it. If you have a problem, this is what you do. There will also be emails. There will also be letters that go to each and every consumer that we have dealt with. We have an entire process and system that we've been working on to respond to this.
Okay. Well, all right, but answer my question. Is there any way that first wave going out are only reconciled accounts?
No.
Why?
Because there is a requirement that these documents, and it's a federal requirement, that these documents be created and provided within a specific time period. It's not that we have the option of sending these out in waves. Everything has to be done by January 31st. So we're not in a position to pick and choose, unfortunately. We're going to have to get everything out. We know and understand and accept that there will be corrections that have to be made, and we will work through those with our consumers.
How is Xerox interacting with this? Because they're producing these documents.
I'm not sure what you mean by interacting, but they are in fact producing these documents.
Let me rephrase it. How are we keeping their feet to the fire if they depart March 31st and we've got waves of 1095 that are inaccurate?
Let me answer that question a couple of different ways. First of all, although we've talked about Xerox leaving on March 31st, that's highly unlikely. And I say that for a couple of reasons. First of all, we've been notified that the IRS is doing an audit from March 29th to April 2nd. And I've already put Xerox on notice of that fact. So the ability to decommission the system on March 31st, or their ability to do it in the midst of an IRS audit, that is probably not going to happen. Okay. We are also in discussions with the highest level of folks at Xerox to talk through everything that goes with the decommissioning process, including potentially extending the deadline by a month or 2 months, depending upon the circumstances we find ourselves in and what makes sense. In terms of, I hesitate to discuss how we hold people's feet to the fire.
Just for the record, the board has asked. I know some of that's legal and
right.
And so just take it as...
I will share, I will indicate to the board that I share your concerns and that I understand the demands that will be made on us as we go forward and we have these problems. And I understand that it is likely that there's going to be some pushing back and forth and some shoving. But the commitment that I will make to the board is we will get through this. We will. And I'm not going to tell you it's going to be pretty, but we will get through this. We will deal with our consumers. We will address their concerns, and we will do what's necessary.
Madam Chair, I guess I like everything you're saying and everything that it sounds like you're going to be doing. I still think, unless I misunderstood, I still think there needs to be a pre-letter or something that's sent out before, that's not just attached to the 1095, right? The 1095. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of consumers who maybe think they should be getting a 1095 for some reason. And I think maybe even just explaining, here's what's going on. This is the first year. If you did not receive a subsidy, you will not be receiving a 1095.
Actually,
if you well, see, I don't even know that. So I think everyone should get some sort of letter explaining what is coming, even if it's just, even if that letter gets emailed out next week and it's a week prior to them getting the document. I think us getting in front of it, saying we anticipate, you know, I think there's got to be some pre-communication before that 1095, explaining to people that they either are going to get a 1095, everyone's getting a 1095. If they don't get one, who to contact. If they do get one and it's wrong, who to contact. That information can be attached again with the 1095. But I really think we've got to get in front of it.
I don't disagree with you in the least. You know, the question is I talk to my staff all the time because they say to me, well, we want to do this, we want to do this, we want to do this, and this is what we need. And what I say to them is, you're looking for a unicorn, okay? And I can't give you a unicorn. But what I can tell you is this. We will do everything possible. We will communicate in every way possible to our consumers. And that means working with the media, which we do every day. It means sending out press releases. Whether we have the time to send out individual letters prior to the forms going out, forms are going out, the first wave of forms are going out on the 20th. I don't know that I can get a letter prepared and have it printed and have it sent within that time period. But what I can do is explore every avenue and every channel that is available to us to make certain that everyone understands what these forms are, why you're getting them, and what to do if there's a problem with them.
Is that being attached to the 1095?
It is actually, and actually I'll let Tyler, you want to?
Sure, actually, to answer your question, Tyler, for the record, there's going to be an email. We have it set to go out this weekend, and then there will be a letter as well that is ready for approval and will be printed and mailed out. And those will go in advance. The timeline was bumped up as far as the first wave of 1095s being sent out. So at the very least, they'll go out the same day. But anyway, it'll be a separate letter. The letter will be included in the same envelope as the 1095, but there'll be a separate letter sent from us, much like we do the re-enrollment messaging. Same with the emails. But an email will go first. That's the easy part. The mailing, simply because you need the right language. And then printing and mailing that way. That'll go out at the same time. So that is happening.
So, Ludicrous, for the record, thank you. I wish, because this seems like our really big potential challenge, I wish this had been a little bit more full of a report. I wish those documents would have been, that we could have seen those. I think, I wish that part of the report had been,
I'm not sure.
We would have had more information.
I don't think they've got the letter.
Oh, it sounds like it's going
approved.
This weekend.
Approved. Is it?
We've gone through several iterations, and there are multiple letters.
Or even if not, anyway, it sounds like there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that was shared with the board. That is my point. So I wish that we had had a little bit more, because I think I feel like I'm pulling information out, and I wish we had.
I'll make a request that when those letters are approved, send copies to the board so they see what they're like, and we don't have to wait until the next board meeting. Just
no,
keep the board posted on.
We will be happy to send the board basically the text of all communications that are outgoing.
Yeah. All right, I think it's probably really good time to have Shauna talk about the reconciliation, because that dovetails so much into this. So why don't we move on to that agenda item, because this one that we're just closing out does not require any approval or anything. This is just an update for the board. So Shauna, why don't you tell us that you'll have the reconciliation done in a week?
Well, like you said, I'm going to have a large part of it done in a week, but it's not going to be complete in a week. For the record, Shauna DeRose. So the last month, this board report was 3 times as long. I really cut it down. You've heard a lot of this every single month. So I kind of took it down to the nitty gritty here. PCG is still involved. They're still working with the 4 medical carriers on a weekly basis. This was through December 31st. They still had about 230 cases open with, and you can see the numbers there of who they've got those open with. Those have been, in the last 2 weeks, those have been cut almost in half on those cases. Added December to your overall caseload metrics. 392 new cases were opened in December, 600 cases were closed, leaving about 534 there at the end of the month. Again, we've got 2 more weeks on it since then, and we've gotten, again, new ones in and more go out, but I'm going to say I don't have a specific number as it was this morning. I apologize, but obviously it's less than the 500 now. Member reconciliation, when we talked about that in the previous board meetings, we talked about all member reconciliation. I mean, down to, you know, the address and the gender and the plan name and everything. Knowing that the 1095 process was so important to get that information correct, what we did is we really looked at the actual 1095 form and we said, you know, what is the information that we really have to get right now? And there was really only about 6 columns of information on an Excel spreadsheet that we really needed from the carriers to get any discrepancies out of the way. Basically, we're talking start date, term dates, and the amount of premium that was covered with the APTC. If we can get these things, and Social Security numbers, that was another big one. If we can get these things fixed and make sure this goes out, this is our biggest hurdle. I will say that when we started, we got, there were over 700 Social Security numbers in our system that were not coming back as validated from the IRS. I can tell you that as of yesterday, we were down to 1. So we have validated all but 1 as of yesterday. So that was huge because we knew that Social Security numbers were going to be one of the big reasons that people would need an updated 1095 form. The other one, of course, being the payments. And I think that, like you said earlier, this is a matter of education. The 30-day grace period, for example, where the carriers get to keep their APTC. I don't know that the public in general knows that they are responsible for paying that back, and they're going to see that when they get that 1095. So we're looking at those termination dates. We've got emails going back and forth with the carriers, and Xerox and PCG is involved. We're looking to make sure that as the carriers are the source of truth for those termination dates, that we're matching up with what they have. A lot of the carriers made termination dates that we did not have in our system, and we're having to make a lot of changes in the BOSS system to match up those dates. In addition, if we had voluntary termination, somebody sent in a letter requesting terminations as of a certain date, we have to go with that date, that letter. And therefore, if the carrier has a different date than that, we have to say, okay, Mr. Carrier, you have to change that date to match this letter. So there's a lot of these date changes that have to be made. So I can't give you a number. I think that Executive Director Gilbert earlier said he's not going to give a number either. We know they're not all reconciled, but I can't give you a number as to what it is exactly. On the accounting reconciliations, short pay on binder invoices, I can tell you we're down to 0. That's a great thing to be able to come back and say to the board. I know you were very concerned about that. Last month, I think there was like 6 still in that account. We're down to 0 this month. Short pay on the recurring premium. It's actually gone up even for this month because people are still sending in, the wrong amounts. What I can say is that, again, as we're changing and as we're reconciling the termination dates and the effective dates, it's fixing a lot of those issues. And either overpayments would obviously go back to the client, the consumer. Any other short pays will go back out to the carriers on a prorated basis. If there were, say, a medical and dental, and they would each get a proportionate amount, as well as the exchange getting a proportionate amount of our monthly fee out of that amount. 2 items, as of January 7th, there were 2 items left in the suspense module for $676. And then we were down to 220 items in the unprocessed items, and we're continuing to work on those, on a weekly basis. And again, those items still come in every day. We still get checks that come in that don't have names on them. The good thing about the checks is that they expire, so those tend to go away. The ones that we're really concerned about, again, are the money orders and things that we can't do anything about if we don't know what that is, who it's for. So. But the numbers are looking better, and the numbers will eventually, as again, the short pay is the biggest one there, and as we get those accounts reconciled, all of that will either be dispersed to the carriers or go back to their clients, and that's the biggest amount of money there. So with that, I can answer any questions.
What is your time frame on finishing this up?
So the hope was to have the reconciliations done by actually this week, and I can tell you that we didn't get there because of this tremendous number. When the carriers sent us their spreadsheets with their termination dates, and we just saw the tremendous discrepancies between what we had and they had, it was a little bit overwhelming for us to see those numbers, and having to go back and figure out what we need to change, what they need to change. You know, we have to get this right. So,
what's the time frame, though?
I'm going to say that we are working on it as quickly as we can. It'll be at least another couple of weeks before we can get these out. Probably at least 3.
Do we need more people working on it?
It's not a matter of people at this point. No. The carriers have resources that they've put on it. Xerox has their resources on it. I don't believe it's a resource issue at this point.
If we go back to page 2 with the overall case metrics, when you called it out by the carriers there, would each of those carriers agree that, let's take HPN, that they only have 185 open cases that we need to work on?
This is the cases that PCG is involved with. So I show down below there's 500 cases total, but there's only 230 right now that PCG is involved in. So I'm reporting on PCG's case involvement. And then, so there's certain, as we talked about it, I think last month, where there are certain cases that are purely financial. And so PCG is not involved in those cases. PCG is involved when we have to go back and forth where there's an effective date issue or a duplicate HIX ID issue, or there has to be some communication. So PCG is not involved if it's a purely financial issue.
Is the financial the accounting reconciliation?
Yes.
Okay, and so we've got 5,000 of those still remaining?
We've got 4,600 of the short pays, and again, as soon as those accounts are all reconciled with the dates, we will be able to disperse those funds.
And you think you can get through that in a couple of weeks?
I do.
Are you doing this by yourself?
No, I have Xerox and the carriers, and no, there's a whole group of people in this. I mean, I'm not physically going through lane by lane on these.
Let me ask you something. If you're going to be done in a couple of weeks, and I'm just asking this hypothetically, I'm not saying do it. I'm just asking the question. What if we don't send the 1095 out till she's done in 2 weeks?
I'm not willing to
I mean, has anybody talked to the IRS?
I have spoken with the IRS.
What is their?
I have a deadline of January 31st.
Okay. Well, it was a question worth asking.
I understand.
Sounds like Bruce asked it too.
Guess we're on the same page. Yes.
Or just an issue worth pushing, which is you've been amazing, moving along on this. It's almost been, it looked insurmountable originally a year ago, and you've come so long. But to our chairwoman's point, if it can be done in 1 week instead of 2 weeks, or a week and a half instead of 3, I know, as Bruce said, you can't give us a timeline, but your point of a goal being trying to get it done as many days before the letters go out, if we could just really push for that goal.
Yeah. I mean, and again, if you need more resources, this would be the time to pull them in.
It's a great goal
So,
to get them done before the letters go out.
I mean, obviously, that's not something the board can direct. Well, I'm sure we could,
Well,
but I mean, I would rather have that done internally where you know the resources are and where they need to be directed.
We did bring additional resources in on the Xerox side. They did bring additional resources in.
I mean, it's just unfortunate if you're going to be done in 2 weeks that those 1095s.
Minimum 3.
Minimum 3?
A minimum 3 for the number. So,
Okay, so what's the maximum then?
minimum 3. I'm going to say,
No, I really, because I thought we were going to be done by the end of October.
I thought we were too.
Yeah.
But you know what? We just, and again, I have more involvement. Yesterday, a new dental provider, the largest dental provider, just sent their file yesterday. So we're just starting that reconciliation process now. I still have 4 other dental providers who haven't done it at all. So I'm still working at pulling that information from them. So
Is this accounting or are these finance reconciliations when the dental guys send you spreadsheets, or are those the PCG?
It's both. PCG is helping, so the spreadsheets come in, they go to Xerox. Xerox kind of butts up the information, the data, does the comparison, identifies discrepancies, identifies whether we need to make a change in our system or whether the carrier needs to make the change in their system. We then send that file back to the carrier. The carrier looks at it and, may say, yes, we agree with these 200, but these 200 we've got some questions on. And it starts that process of the back and forth. And PCG can help with that process of the back and forth.
When we go back to that table again on PCG with the carrier metrics, we don't have any dental on there. Does that mean that they have 0 case metrics?
PCG has not been involved in any dental caseload to date. Unless Anthem, because Anthem had a dental as well as a medical.
If we expanded this table to include dental, our numbers would go up, stay the same, go 0?
That particular table is to identify the cases that PCG is currently involved with.
I know, but I'm trying to identify what we don't have in this report that you're dealing with. And so I don't see dental on here at all.
So you're asking, do I have cases specific to the dental providers?
Right.
They're included in the 534.
Oh, they are?
Yes.
That was included.
All cases that are within the CRM, within the BOSS system are in that 534.
In that 534.
Oh,
yes.
Good.
Okay. Got it.
So I just have one question on that. So of the 230, is the 230 included in the 534, or do we
Yes.
add those numbers? So the
No.
534 is our number.
Yes.
Okay. So I just have one question. So if there was another person helping you, it would not get done any quicker.
No, it's not me personally. I mean,
It's
I'm
them.
working with all of them, but there
Okay.
is a large group
Right,
of people
right.
doing this process already.
And if everyone was told this has to be done in 10 days, it just wouldn't.
So
is
it's
there
not
no-
the 10
no-
days. Today is the
I've just
15th.
made up
We're
a day.
sending, R.R. Donnelly is our vendor who is actually doing the printing of those 1095 reports. And I think our executive director had mentioned earlier that those get sent out on the 20th because they have to file, the actual data goes, and then our vendor puts it through the process to actually print out those 1095s, and they start getting mailed out as soon as they start getting printed. So we can't wait until the 31st to send that data file to R.R. Donnelly. So there's a lead time that's necessary there in order to actually be able to produce these.
So so when we were kind of talking about how many might be wrong, can't we say 534 might be wrong? No.
So the 534 are cases in the system.
Right.
Okay. The number of discrepancies, for example, here, in the Anthem file alone, there were about 700 discrepancies in the dates where we went through the dates and their dates and we looked. There was about 700. Some we could fix right away. We could say, yep. Some we had to say, no, Anthem, we need to take a look at this again, or you need to go change this in your system, right? So it's the back and forth. Those are not cases. Okay, a case is
that's
something
not in this report at all.
No, it's not in this report. It's not in this report at all. So that's a different. I have been monthly reporting on caseload, and we've seen that go down. This 1095 reporting and the reconciliation that Mr. Gilbert has been talking about is not included in this report.
But it's directly linked
It
to
is.
the success of it.
It is.
Oh, question.
Oh. A double one. Okay, do we have any other questions at all? All right, let's move on to agenda item number, where are we? 12. On 12, discussion, possible action items, dates, suggestion on agenda items for future meeting. And I have a request for next month's agenda. And that is that Nevada statute requires that we elect a chair and a vice chair on an annual basis. and we kind of missed it last year. So I'm reminding everyone we need to do this. Yesterday, I had the opportunity of meeting with the governor, our Governor Sandoval, to let him know that I'm not going to be seeking re-election to the chair position for the board. I know we're in a really good place right now. I mean, for the infrastructure, we've got things that we need to do, but I think this is a good time to transition for new leadership for the board. And I've had two very strong vice chairs, Ms. Atkins and also Leslie Johnstone, and I would hope that they would consider moving up to the board position if that's something that works for them. All of you are qualified for that position. And I think I can promise to you that you won't have to put in as many hours as I have enjoyed over the last 3 years. We do have some tasks ahead of us, this 1095 issue, the closeout of Xerox, and monitoring the litigation that's before us. But we have a really strong new executive director. We have good guidance from the governor's office. We've got great AGs working on this, and we have excellent outside counsel that's working towards this. Over the next month, I hope all of you think about enjoying this position, because I really have enjoyed it, even though I've put in a ton of hours with it. And if you are interested in it, I'd ask you to contact our executive director, because we need to get this agendized for the next board meeting, and that is February 12th. So that's my request for agenda items.
We'll think about it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Question?
Yes,
You'll just step down and still participate on the board?
I will.
We will, with a heavy heart, make certain that we put that on the next agenda.
Thank you. Well, it was something by statute. It has nothing to do with the heart.
I understand.
Anyway, does anybody else have anything else that they'd like to bring before the board on the agenda? Times?
I think there's some of the items we talked about during the meeting.
Yeah,
so
I
as long
think
as
we've
those are-
covered all those. And then if you have those letters that are going to go out with the 1095s, I would ask that we get those off to the board members as well.
We'll make sure that that occurs.
Okay. All right. And all right, so it's February 12th, Carson City, and here in Henderson, and it'll either be 1 or 1:30, which we normally do. And with that, then we go to public comment. Any public comment in Carson City?
No, Madam Chair.
How about here in Henderson? I don't see any. Then I think we can adjourn.
Thanks, Madam
Thank you.
Chair.